Hey everybody, welcome back to Zees Political Arrow, the channel where we pull no punches and dig deep into the political realities shaping our world today. What we got in front of us today is that we're tackling a complex, polarizing, and deeply important issue. U.S. supporting Israel amid its occupation and the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Our guest today is none other than Professor John Mearsheimer, a titan of political theory. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. Our mission is to expose the truths that others fear to address, and we've got plenty more coming our way. Let's jump in.
So where does your theory stand now on the Israel-Gaza-Lebanon war? How do you dissect this conflict now?
The Palestinians live inside Greater Israel, right? There's no Palestinian state fighting against an Israeli state. My theory applies to interstate conflict, and it mainly applies to conflict between great powers. And in the Middle East, we're not talking about great powers. And indeed, with regard to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, we're not even talking about an interstate conflict. You had a first intifada in 1987. You had a second intifada in 2000. And what happened on October 7th is just another manifestation of this conflict between the Palestinians and the Israelis inside of Greater Israel.
You don't believe anymore in the two-state solution.
I thought that the two-state solution was possible many years ago.
What killed that prospect for Palestinians?
I think that the Israelis have never had any interest in a two-state solution from the get-go. I mean, the conventional wisdom in the West, certainly in the United States, is that the Israelis have generously offered the Palestinians a state of their own on a number of occasions. And on each one of those occasions, the Palestinians have rejected that generous offer. I think this is nonsense. This is simply not true. The Israelis have never offered the Palestinians a viable state of their own, and they have never had any interest in that. We're at a point today where it's virtually impossible to imagine Israel giving the Palestinians a state of their own. I think there are really only two possibilities on the table. One is the continuation of apartheid Israel, or ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians in Gaza and in the West Bank. And it started in 1948 with the Nakba. The second big cleansing was in 1967. And there is some cleansing taking place now, although the Israelis have not been able to move large numbers of Palestinians out of Gaza or the West Bank. Mm-hmm. And hopefully they won't be able to do that.
How does one any person in the American administration see this genocide unfolding, see these horrible images, and just continue with this passive, almost supportive policies towards Israel?
I wonder myself. I mean, they're under tremendous pressure from the Israel lobby to support Israel no matter what. So if Israel commits a genocide, as it's doing in Gaza, there's no question that the lobby is going to great lengths to pressure politicians and policymakers to support Israel completely. And most of them are doing that. I'm amazed at how few people have stood up and said that this is unacceptable, that this has to stop. I mean, you take someone like Samantha Power, who's the head of the USAID. She made her reputation as a scholar on genocide, and she made it clear that she was horrified by genocides and horrified by the fact that the United States had not done enough in the past to shut down or to prevent genocides. And here she is in the Biden administration in a very prominent position, not protesting what's going on in Gaza. You would just expect human beings who see things like this happening to stand up and say enough is enough.
How does the US administration rationalize being a supporter of a genocide? How is this rational politically to the US?
Many people don't use the word genocide. So many people believe that it's not actually a genocide that is taking place. A lot of people just bury their head in the sand. They don't want to see the evil that is taking place in Gaza, and therefore they keep their mouths shut.
So technically, narrative is a big player.
There's no question that the narrative matters. The argument that the Iranians are the master puppeteers who are the principal cause of all of this trouble that we see today. I think this argument is nonsense. The Iranians are not the principal cause of this problem. The Israelis are the principal cause of this problem. But there's a narrative in the West that tells you the opposite argument, that blames the Iranians. This is a conflict between the Palestinians and the Israelis, and it's an unfair fight, right? The Israelis are Godzilla and the Palestinians are Bambi.
All right, I'm just going to pause it here real quick, and I'll continue here right away. Did you catch how Professor John described Israel's evolution? Once being an underdog, and now it's a full-on Goliath, with the help of U.S. playing an ever-loyal partner program, carrying its weapon, and footing the bill. And let's not forget, this David-turned-Godzilla narrative conveniently masks the decades of systematic oppression and occupation. Israel's reliance on U.S. support isn't just military or economic, it's also ideological. The narrative we're sold is that of a tiny, threatened democracy surrounded by hostile forces. But when your biggest enemy is a resistance group with a slingshot disguised as a rocket, maybe it's time to admit you're not in imminent danger. You've got a top-tier military, advanced tech, and a blank check from Uncle Sam, yet somehow we're still expected to believe Israel is the victim. Think about it. This is a heavyweight champion demanding that a middle schooler armed with a paper plane be disqualified from the match because he might throw it. Ridiculous, right? But this is the absurdity of the US-Israel dynamic. The American taxpayer is funding this imbalance. Billions of dollars poured into a military machine that continues to dismantle lives in Gaza and in West Bank and now Lebanon. And while Israel talks about security, all it's securing is international disdain and endless cycles of violence. Let me know down in the comments if you agree or disagree. All right, let's jump back.
Where is Israel taking the region?
Israel has this dream that it's going to remake the region. It's going to put an end to apartheid Israel by cleansing the Palestinians. It's going to defeat Hezbollah and remove Hezbollah as a threat. And with regard to Iran, Iran will be neutralized as well. And the United States will play the key role in doing that. The Israelis understand full well they're not in a position to sort of do great damage to Iran and neuter Iran. But the United States can do that in their mind. The United States can deal with the Iranian nuclear program.
Israel is continuously seeking to exert its power in the region, but it also talks about increasing its security, yet past events have shown that it only decreases it. How can one rationalize this balance between power and desire for security from Israel?
Israel is ideologically committed to a greater Israel. The Israelis believe that the West Bank and the Gaza Strip belong to them, that this is sacred territory. And they furthermore understand that the Palestinians are a problem. They're a roadblock to them creating a homogeneous Jewish state that includes Gaza and the West Bank. So they think they are justified from an ideological point of view in removing the Palestinians from that territory. And they make an argument about security that goes along with that ideological argument. When I was young and I first started studying the Arab-Israeli conflict, the Israelis fought wars against the Egyptians, against the Syrians, against the Jordanians. These were conventional wars, and the Israelis were very adept at fighting those wars. And they did not need much help from the United States or any other country to win those wars. If you think about the world that Israel lives in today, it's no longer worried about fighting a conventional war against Egypt or a conventional war against Syria. It's fighting against resistance groups like Hamas and Hezbollah that are armed with missiles and rockets. It's fighting against Iran And it's not fighting a conventional war against Iran. It's dealing with rockets, missiles, and drones coming from Iran. The Israelis are now in a position where they have to depend heavily on the United States. One does not want to underestimate how important it is for Israel today to have military support and economic support from the United States. There's no way Israel could be fighting these wars without lots of support from the United States. This is a fundamentally different situation than Israel was in back in the 1950s, 1960s, 70s, and even in the 1980s.
Professor John Mearsheimer doesn't mince words here, and neither do we. Israel's quest for a so-called Greater Israel has come to a catastrophic cost, not just to Palestinians, but to a moral fabric of the global community. How long can the US bankroll apartheid without tarnishing its own reputation? It's a question we'll keep asking. If you enjoyed today's takedown, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to Zees Political Arrow. Trust me, you don't want to miss our next episode, where we'll dive into geopolitics with even sharper arrows. Until next time, remember, the truth is out there and we're here to aim it right at the bullseye. Keep your wits sharp and your politics sharper.